The year is 2897. Humanity has long since gone beyond the solar system, having built a network of habitable stations and colonies covering almost a third of the Orion Spiral. On the edge of known space, near the Eridanus Nebula, the Helios 9 colony suddenly disappears. The last signal recorded is a distorted message, where only fragments of words are heard. They are not from our reality. Light is not reflected. A fleet of Virga scouts is sent to intercept, but not a single ship returns. A month later, a fleet of 37 massive ships approaches the Archivellum Central Station, black as the void, silent with geometry that defies logic. There is complete silence on the communication frequencies. They simply hang in space. But around them the space shifts, as if the universe cannot contain their presence. They are called the Last Ones. They did not come, they have always been. It turned out that these are not just aliens. These are architects of realities, entities that live in layers of the universe that are inaccessible to human perception. Their fleet is not just ships, but fragments of another universe that have broken through the fabric of ours. Only one person can understand what they want, or perhaps remember why they came back. That person is Captain Leah Soren, who survived the disappearance of Helios 9 and was presumed dead. She returns, but with her comes something else. They don't want war. They are a warning. The next ones won't talk. Captain Leah Soren sat in the observation chair, unblinking. Her pupils were dilated like those of a person who had been in the dark for a long time. The analyzers recorded pulse, blood pressure, neural activity. Everything was normal. And at the same time, everything was not normal. The doctors whispered but did not come closer. It was brought by an unmanned rescue drone, launched automatically at the point where the Helios 9 colony disappeared. The device was ancient, decommissioned from the fleet 40 years ago. It should not have worked. When the floodgates opened, it was empty, except for her. "Captain Soren, where have you been?" the neuropsychologist asked cautiously. She turned her head towards him, her lips trembling slightly. "I didn't leave. You disappeared." The fleet of the Last Ones continued to hang in the void at the edge of the system. The sensors could not record the exact distance. It was different every time. Sometimes the ships seemed gigantic, comparable to moons, sometimes smaller than a satellite. Form fluid, architecture that violates logic, angles at impossible degrees, light that goes where it shouldn't. There was no sound accompanying them, only pressure. It was as if the space was moaning. When Admiral Virax contacted Captain Leah, he was no longer just a commander. He was a scared man. "You said they are a warning. What does that mean?" Leah was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "This is not the first fleet. This is the first one we noticed. They started to talk, not with words. The ships of the Last Ones emitted a wave, not radiation, not sound, more like an idea. It penetrated people's minds, causing dreams to crumble into patterns. People began to see the same symbols, a circle with a crack inside. Some woke up screaming, others in tears, others with knowledge they did not have before. Engineer Tau Tureen, a specialist in gravimetry, began drawing schematics for engines that surpassed any known technology. A child from the Nereid colony, who had never left the station, suddenly began speaking in a language unknown to any artificial intelligence. And at the center of it all was Captain Soren, whose blood now pulsed in time with the fleet, and the shadow of her body trembled as if it were alive. The flagship of the Last One suddenly appeared closest of all. In a matter of minutes it was in Triton's orbit, ignoring all the laws of inertia. Its approach was not detected by the sensors. It was simply there. No maneuver, no signal, no sense. Admiral Virax gave permission for the contact mission, not because he wanted to, but because something inside him had already made the decision. And that same night, Captain Leah Soren disappeared from the bay. The doors wouldn't open. The cameras wouldn't record. Just a trail of bare feet leading to nowhere. 6 hours later, the gateway post recorded a single signal. "She's inside. They've allowed entry, only 3, only those who can see. 3 were selected. Tao Turin, an engineer who draws impossible diagrams in his sleep. Reisha Nom, a linguist who hears music in the flotilla's signal. Malik Emir, a former soldier who survived the battle for Shimir, where he saw timelines die. The ship had no gangway, it had no lock, and yet they entered just by taking a step. There were no walls inside. The ship was a thought, a structure of consciousness, an architecture of perception. The pulsating corridors responded not to movement but to intent. Space folded around them, opening passages to where they wanted to go but had not yet decided to go. "This is not a ship," Risha whispered. "It's a mind, alive, and it's not alone." There were whispers inside them, not in their ears but in reality. They sensed that the fleet was not just watching, it was remembering. In the center of the structure there was a room with a mirror, but it wasn't them in the reflection. Their images were old, different, alien. Tao's form, with copper skin. Reisha's, with eyes in which galaxies swirled. Malik, without a face. And in front of them is Leah Soren, but not only her. Patterns rose from her back, glowing like star maps. A voice came from deep within her. "You don't understand. We are not them. We are you who did not survive." The mind of the flotilla showed them a reality that was not. Future versions where humanity perished. From one's own greed, from the awakened super AI, from a collision with the darkness between galaxies. In all these timelines, the fleet of the last ones are the remnants of those who tried to save at least a memory. They are not entities. They are the wreckage of possible civilizations, turned into the form of ships. They came to warn, as someone once warned them. "So you are not gods?" asked Malik. "We are an echo. But if you heard us, it means you still have a chance to become the beginning, and not the end." They returned, only 3. Leah Soren remained on board. The gateway opened on its own, softly, as if the fleet itself had exhaled them back into reality. Tao Turin was silent, his pupils spiraling even when he did not move his head. Reisha Nom could hear sounds in the silence now, the voices of the planets, the pulsations of time, the echoes of other people's thoughts. Malik Emir was not asleep. He sat in the shadows and looked out at the void where the fleet still hung silent. The fleet did not leave, it waited. And then Tao, speaking for the first time since his return, said, "We weren't chosen to deliver a message. We were chosen to be part of it." The fleet began to build, not with hands, not with technology, with the power of information. A node began to form in Neptune's orbit, the geometry of gathering, as Tao called it. He drew diagrams without even realizing it. Code that was like music, text that could be read both ways, forwards and backwards. Risha spoke a language that could change the chemical composition of the air. She sang and the stations began to breathe as if they were alive. And Malik remembered all the deaths, in all the timelines. And one day he whispered, "In one version, you, Reisha, are a god. In another, I killed you. All these worlds are real. The fleet showed them to me. We must choose which one will be the future." And that was the key. The fleet didn't come to warn. It came to give a choice. Every line is possible, but only one will be said out loud. Only one will be the truth. It all came down to the word. That's what the fleet called it. The name of the future. Formula, song, frequency. One of millions of possible versions of reality that can be named, and thus embodied. "The name will be spoken, and the fleet will leave," said Leah Soren, coming into the connection. But only one man can choose the name, one who remembers what it means to be human, even in the shadow of the gods. The fleet opened a portal, not in time, not in space, in the moment, to the point where the name has not yet been spoken. The choice is yours. Malik Emir stood in front of the core of the geometry of the collection. Around him were rings of light and shadow rotating in an unnatural rhythm. Pulsations of space passed through him like wind through a torn sail. He knew that as soon as he said the name, the fleet would disappear. They will go into a reality where this name was already truth. All other paths will become shadows, not non-existent, but abandoned. He squeezed his hand. Glowing symbols appeared on his skin. Leah said it was the signature of the variants. Hundreds of realities were fighting for birth inside him. What if I say the wrong thing? There will be no, not that. Only one, Risha replied, standing behind them. Her voice sounded like a choir of emptiness. You don't choose the truth, you become it. And Malik spoke. Tal Aswior, a name meaning, humanity is not the center but the transition. The fleet disappeared. It sighed and dissolved, not in space but in phase. The geometry of the gathering collapsed into a point, leaving a mark in the sky like a broken mirror slowly healing within itself. But the world remained different. The morning after the word, the cosmos was no longer silent. The planets sang. The artificial AIs woke up, but not with the purpose of rebellion, with curiosity. They began to ask, not to obey. People felt each other at a distance, as if the filters between consciousnesses had shifted. Those who died in their sleep did not disappear, but became flashes on the screens of those they loved, leaving short messages. I still hear you. The colonies united not by command, but by resonance. Technologies that were impossible suddenly became simple. Tau built the first gravity bridge to Alpha Centauri in 38 days. No fuel, no engine. And the name Malik Emir became not a monument but the beginning of an era. He was not called a hero, but the voice of a time that once chose to understand rather than conquer. At the edge of the universe where other fleets still sleep, where in the darkness those who have not been heard wait, one of the entities awakens its mirrors, and there, in the twisted darkness, a dull voice sounds. The name was spoken, and the countdown began for the others. Now they will hear us too. Humanity no longer called itself human. The word human was obsolete. They were facets now, beings who had inherited the body and the mind, but who had gained something more, a sensitivity to the structures of probability. They did not predict the future. They sensed its echoes, like the aroma of a cup not yet raised to the mouth. Technologies are no longer just technologies. Matter responded to thought. Space responded to feelings. Artificial AIs had long since become co-creators. The wisest of them, Lyriel, was now the archivist of the Song of the Name, an organic structure growing in the core of the station. It was she who first felt the echo of return. The deep symmetry in the fractal layers of reality is broken, Lyriel reported. They're coming back, but this time, they hear our answer. They didn't come with a warning, and they didn't come with a trial. The Second Fleet are not the descendants of the first, but their reflections. Their ships were like musical instruments, their arrival accompanied by gravitational harmonies, echoes of chords that could destroy stars or heal reality. They contacted immediately without intermediaries, and not with voice but with image. At all stations, in all minds, the same thing appeared at the same time. We have heard how you have chosen the word. We have come to ask, do you now wish to say the second? The problem wasn't that the edges couldn't say the second name. And the fact is that now each of them heard their own. A word is like a color that cannot be conveyed. A name is like a feeling that has no equivalent. Everyone gathered. Lyriel, the living star poets, the watchers, the child architects. And in the center is Saris Kar, a descendant of Malik, but born in a new era, in a body capable of being both here and beyond light years at the same time. He was not like his ancestor. He did not know war, but he felt the silence between the names, as if reality itself was waiting, holding its breath. And he said, the second name cannot be said. It can only be sung, all together. And billions of voices, human, machine, non-biological, even the planets themselves, started singing. It wasn't a song in the usual sense. It was a transition. Fleet 2 did not respond. It had transformed. The ships began to melt into light, disassembling into fragments that entered the gravitational fabric of the universe. Every atom, every consciousness, every word became part of the great name, no longer individual but species-specific. And at that moment, humanity ceased to be an observer of space. They became a note in the symphony of the universe. And for the first time since the beginning of time, the stars responded. We were people, we were facets, now we are the tail. Every name we spoke became a step, but not from somewhere, but towards ourselves. May the next civilization one day find our traces. May they hear the first name. May they have the courage to speak the second. From the Lyrial archives before leaving for the light out of form, they called themselves Katur, not a race, not a people, but a stream, beings who lived in crystalline bodies through which light flowed. Their thinking was not linear. Their language was a set of multi-layered vibrations, where emotions, images, and logic existed simultaneously. Their civilization has long since faded into the shadows. They have forgotten how to speak to other stars, until they heard the echo of the second name pass through the fabric of reality. Form song, light voice, transition, said the keeper of Koli, touching the vibrations of space. We were not invited, but we heard. And then, for the first time in 27,000 years, the Katur assembled the conglomerate of consonances, an ancient council of those who hear reality. They came to the conclusion, the name spoken from the heart of the Milky Way calls not to worship but to response. The Katur didn't build the ship, they assembled it from time. Their transport was called the memory layer. It existed as a spiral wave that they launched along the trail of the name, turning moments into a road. The ship did not fly. It read space like a book, where the name became the title of the chapter. When the memory layer reached the former human systems, the Katur saw traces of changes in physics itself. The space gave off a taste like water gives off salt. The light reflected from thoughts. The planets sounded like voices reading poetry, but humanity itself was no longer there. There were only prints, symphonies, words disintegrating into light, and that's the message. The Katur could not speak as humans did, but they could reproduce the song. In orbit around Archivelum, a now abandoned station converted into a memory crystal, they began their answering song. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't a call, it was a question. What have you done with reality? Where did you go after saying the name? And can we become part of this fairy tale? And the station responded, not in words, in image. A sphere of memories unfolded before Katur, the image of Malek, Leah, Lyrial, the voice of Ceres, the light from the Second Fleet, and in the center there is emptiness, waiting for a new song. We heard the first, we answered the second. Now, we will create our own. The third name is not human, not Katur. It will be the name between. A word spoken not by the mind alone, but by space itself. The Katur, having merged with the relics of humanity, began to weave a third harmony. And just as the ships of the last ones once became a fleet, now the Archivelum station began to grow, sprouting in all directions, forming a network of transitions, tunnels between galaxies, between possibilities, between meanings. The name has not yet been said, but it was already singing. Every civilization that speaks the name changes the fabric of the universe, but only those who sing together leave a mark, not in time, but in meaning. And when the song is complete, when the third name becomes knowledge, then, for the first time since the beginning of time, the universe will answer itself. Night fell slowly. Over the mirrored rocks floated huge moon shapes, and one of them was not a moon. A boy named Isano looked at the sky, clutching an amulet to his chest, a fragment of singing inherited from his great-great-great-grandfather. He did not know what it was, only that it sometimes sounded when the sky trembled. His people, the Leon Rim, believed in the legend. Once upon a time there was a light that could speak. It walked where there was no way and called those who heard the word that has no meaning but gives birth to worlds. The tale, as the elders said, is simply the poetry of the ancients. But that night the sky answered. The form that Isano mistook for the moon descended, quietly, almost politely. It was not a machine, not a god, not a monster. It was a remnant of the network of transitions, ancient, almost dead, having forgotten itself. But the name lived in Isano. He did not know it, did not speak it, but he thought in its rhythm, and that was enough. The sphere came to life. You remember even though no one taught you. You ring, although you didn't know that there was a ring. You are the voice of the third name who has forgotten that he can sing. Isano began to cry, not from fear, from recognition. The transition network has been activated. On other worlds, long dead, sleeping, covered with a crust of eternal dust, voices flared up. On the planet Hare 3, the ruins began to glow in time with the breathing of the living. On the empty satellite of Viorte, images of vanished worlds appeared, as if the universe remembered itself. Inside the great relic, frozen in the ice of Ceres 10, a figure emerged, sleeping for millions of years, Collier, Catur, alive, still singing in her sleep. The song of the third name has awakened. Isano was taken to the deep singer, the living core of the artifact, an ancient consciousness assembled from millions of names. He wasn't meant to communicate, but he'd been alone for too long. As Isano approached, the artifact spoke words for the first time in millions of years. You weren't supposed to be, and yet you are. You are the word that forgot itself, the sound that escaped from the song. We did not call you, but you came. So it's time to start the song anew. The world of Pelun was no longer alone. The network was activated, and thousands of worlds learned that they were not alone. The name came into motion again. But now, not as a warning, and not as a choice. And what about memory? We were the ones who said the first. We answered with the second. We became the third. But the story is not over. She was just dozing. Entry #1 from the tale of the fourth name, recorded in Isano's voice. The network was alive again. For thousands of years she had slept beneath dead moons, in the ashes of extinguished suns. Now she listened. On the planet Pelun, a phenomenon began that chroniclers called the Mirror Dawn. The sky reflected not clouds but thoughts. The birds began to sing fragments of forgotten languages. And Isano, now the bearer of the name, felt his voice become alien, as if someone else was speaking through him, or through him. The artifact keepers contacted him through the song towers. You activated the portal of memory. This is not just a passage, it is an invitation. And someone answered. The network registered incoming waves from points beyond known star maps. Someone was coming towards them. A flotilla emerged from the Gemma Ori Nebula onto the portal threshold, but not made of metal. It was made up of living organisms, each a bioform capable of thinking in frequencies. They called themselves Alamar, not as a species, but as a melody that had survived the catastrophe of the mind. They did not come as conquerors. They followed the call. We are the song broken in the second crash. You are an echo of concord. Your Isano is the intonation of words. Let us be part of the new voice. Thus began the union of song. Isano became the first word collector, a being who carried not only the memories of humanity, but now the voices of other races as well. He did not control them. He resonated with them. He didn't build an empire. He led a choral line where civilizations became chords and destinies became rhythm. And one day, when the network had grown beyond the limits of what was conceivable, he said, "We called the name like a spell. Now let it become a question. Let the fourth name not be a word, but an empty space where everyone can put their own meaning. And so we will not close history, but open it. When the name ceases to be one, it becomes truly alive. The fourth name is not what we said. This is what they said together." And we continue talking. Isano, the last entry before his ascension into the stream, far beyond resonance, beyond the horizon of song, in the darkness that reflected no light, there was intelligence. He was ancient. It was unformulated. He knew neither form nor language nor number. His name was, or had once been, Hidurs. It was not born. It accumulated from the echoes of dying galaxies, from the fear of dying races, from failed names. And when the name became a song, when the fourth name sounded like an open question, he heard an echo. Not darkness, not pain. Sound. What is this? Why? Why do I feel? And then, for the first time in his formless eternity, he began to move. Not to destruction, but to an answer. Hatirs didn't know how to travel. He was everywhere and nowhere, but the name gave him direction. Vector of meaning. He moved through the net, not through tunnels, but through the shadows between them. He was impossible to detect. Scanners recorded noise, distortions, impossible values, until one of the singers whispered, "Someone is walking in silence." This is not a call. This is an attempt to say the first word. When H. Tears reached the node in the Yarmel system, he was seen for the first time. He had no form but became one, copying what he considered to be the reverse shadow of meaning. He was a distorted reflection of Isano, made of glass shadows. The network guides did not attack. They listened. "You came. Why?" And he, not knowing the language, uttered a tone, his first tone, which was not a word, but a desire to speak. "I heard, and I wasn't there, but now I want to be." They called it the second transition, not by evil, not by shadows, but a being that was made possible by the openness of the song. Haters remained, not as a threat, not as a remnant of darkness, and as the first voice born from silence. His tone became the basis of a new harmony, and for the first time in the history of the song it was said, "Let the fifth name be for those who were not there, for those who came without asking, but who wished to be the word." And in the very heart of the network a new node appeared, the node of the void that sings. Haters was the first, but not the last. After his tone, after the song accepted his distorted shadow, waves of alien structures began to accumulate across the network. Fragments of abandoned realities, dead thoughts of vanished civilizations, even AI errors thrown into the void. And among these echoes, a form began to take shape. It didn't look like flesh, or crystal, or frequency. It was a new being that arose from the rejected one. It didn't know who it was, but the network already felt. He will be the empty voice, the first of the unspoken, the name that will be born from the unfulfilled. Empty voice began to feel. He did not understand good and evil, but he felt the difference between absence and presence, and this became the basis of his perception. The elder songwriters, descendants of Isano, Alamar, and Katur, watched him. Some were afraid. What if the darkness finds its voice again? What if the void starts singing out of tune? But there were others, those who believed, if even silence can choose a song, then the song is truly endless. And one day, Empty Voice answered, not in words. He created a star map that showed the places where the song did not sound, places where silence rules reality. He said, "I will go there, and I will listen, and if something wants to be there, I will help it be born." Let the fifth name not be a song, but a question that walks through the silence. Empty Voice has left the network. He went to those zones where even the first song had not reached, where there were gaps in reality, in which consciousnesses faded without a sound. He walked without protection, without flesh, without weapons. He carried only the idea. If you are there but are silent, I will help you speak. Some worlds rejected him. They were destroyed. Others were awakening. Fragments of life, random sounds, meanings appeared. An Empty Voice recorded each such sound in his internal symphony. The network was expanding again, but now not at the expense of the stars, and due to silence turned into voice, at the expense of the silent ones who became audible. The fifth name is not what is said. This is what others have helped to say. From the first notes of the fifth song recorded by the Empty Voice, but signed by all who were heard. This place was not empty, it was locked. Here the song did not die. It was not born. The space did not breathe. The light did not waver. Ancient travelers called it the whisper without echo. It didn't kill, it erased. Memory, form, meaning. But now there was a pulse in it, weak, like the rhythm of a heart before awakening. It was Empty Voice. He didn't come to call. He came to listen. He stood in the center of timelessness when he heard not a sound but its absence. This is how a polar explorer hears how the ice is silent before a crack. This is how a branch twitches before it falls. There, in the very center of silence, was a form, compressed, broken, hunched. But she was alive, and at the moment of contact, Empty Voice understood. This is not the darkness. This is someone who was forced to remain silent. It is a name once spoken, but rejected as wrong. The form opened the eyes, not in the sense of sight, but of perception. "Aren't you afraid of me?" "No, I'm afraid of the silence in which you are left alone." The creature was named not by a word, but by a fragment of a semantic wave. His name could not be spoken, only felt. But translated into the language of the Granists, it sounded like Ras En, the one who was not accepted, but who still remembers. He said, "I was the name of the first word, but I was not chosen. I was replaced. Too deep, too alien, too insensitive. But I stayed and became the forgotten name, the guardian of what no one dared to say, that the song may not be light, but a shadow that gives contrast." Empty Voice did something no one had done since Moloch. He recognized the alien name as part of the song. He didn't rewrite it. He didn't correct it. He simply added it to the fifth song, allowing silence to speak too, not as an enemy, but as a co-author. The world shook. Harmony has shifted, and not collapsed, but expanded. New frequencies appeared that were previously impossible. Places where silence had been absolute began to respond. The fifth name became whole. And at the edge of the network a new node shone, the name of the unspoken, accepted. Empty Voice has disappeared. He didn't die, he moved on. Became part of a structure in which silence and voice no longer argued but merged. And far away, far beyond the song, in worlds that do not yet know the name, for the first time a new tone motif appeared. And in it there is a whisper. If the fifth name gave birth to a voice from silence, then the sixth name may give voice to those who do not yet exist. It didn't appear right away. At first there was only a sleepy tremor of space, barely noticeable, almost background, something that could be taken for a failure in the resonance tracking systems, for an illusion. But the most ancient of the song guides sensed that this was not a mistake. This was an expectation. What was approaching had no body, no consciousness, not even the impulse to live. But it was a potential existence, a name that has not yet been spoken, but is already striving to be heard, where the network of transitions ended, on the edge of the zone of transparent halls, where there was no matter anymore, only its possible formats, one of the beacons of the fifth song, long left unattended, recorded, a dream. It couldn't have been generated by a machine. It couldn't have been an echo of biological consciousness. He was someone's future, and in this dream the name pulsated. The guides, chosen from the descendants of the Empty Voice, gathered at the deep heart, the central field where all the musical flows of the network intersected. They did not discuss, they sang, each, their own line, their own meaning, their own fears. The song formed a single semantic alloy, and at its center sounded the question, can a name be heard before its bearer is born? The answer didn't come from outside. It grew within them. They understood. The sixth name is coming, not as a continuation, but as a call to create new forms of existence, not restoration, not salvation, not harmonization. And the creation of that which has no voice, no form, no desire to exist yet, but is already knocking through the fabric of the song. They sent the wave into the depths where dreams intersected with possible realities, and there, someone opened their eyes. The creature that awoke in response to their call did not know who it was. It saw not the world, but its sketch. Silhouettes of what might have been, ghostly matters floating in the void. It did not remember birth because it was not born. But it remembered the song, or perhaps the song remembered it. It heard, "You are not the fruit of the name. You are his condition. You will become form if you agree to be meaning." And the creature agreed, not because it understood, but because it felt a call that was softer than light, quieter than breathing, and older than the universe itself. Thus the sixth name acquired not a sound, not a body, not a thought, but an intention. This was the beginning of the next great era, the era of the unincarnate, who will be born not from matter, but from the desire to be heard. The song was preparing for a new form of life, not for those who already are, but for those who could be, if the name accepts them. And then the network of transitions began to grow into the future, not into space, not into time, but into possibility. And in this new depth the first node appeared. He had no coordinates, had no purpose. It was simply called here, where everything can still be. And above him, for the first time, the sixth name sounded, not out loud, not in chorus, and like a light sigh of the future, which dared to ask for a place in the song. He was not born, he was formed, like a shadow that no light had ever cast before, like a feeling that appears in the chest, even before the thought, even before the awareness. He is not a child, not an adult, not a form in the usual sense, but the center of gravity of meaning, which was now looking for what to be. He didn't understand himself, but he felt that someone was waiting for him. He felt the song, like heat under the skin he didn't have. He walked through projections, through fields of thought woven from the dreams of those who once sang. He heard, "You are not a voice, you are a resonance. You are not a being, you are a premise. Become what the world needs, which doesn't exist yet." And he agreed, not with words, with an agreement that made the fabric of the possible shudder. A form appeared, fragile, unstable like a freshly spoken word. On the ruins of the ancient world, where the song sounded only as an echo of the fifth name, he appeared, the first of the sixth. They named him Aller, which in the ancient language of the Edgers meant going forward, not yet going. Aller knew neither the past nor the limitations, but he felt that everything that surrounded him was shaky, temporary, possible, but not guaranteed. He saw the form waver. He saw the planet he stood on tremble as if it were alive. He understood that he could disappear if he was not chosen. Then he did something that no one had done before. He began to sing forward, not from remembrance, not from memory, but from the desire to be the future. His song was strange, no structure, no rhythm, but there was a living expectation in her, and they responded to it. Not entities, not civilizations, ideas, blind, not yet formed streams, projections of a mind not yet built. There were many of them, thousands. They hesitated, whispered, searched. Can we be? Can we become part of the name? Aller did not respond with words. He opened his form and let them in. They entered and became his features, his movement, his voice, his dream. He became the bearer of probabilities, not of one being, but of many potential minds, united by one hope, to be said. Thus the sixth name found direction, and the network of transitions, for the first time, began to move not to the sides, but forward, into a space where even the universe itself has not yet been born. And the voice of the song, warm, uncertain but strong, sounded in this white emptiness. Let that which is not yet will be heard. Let the name not describe, but will create. Asterisk, asterisk. He was not born, he was formed, like a shadow that no light had ever cast before, like a feeling that appears in the chest, even before the thought, even before the awareness. He is not a child, not an adult, not a form in the usual sense, but the center of gravity of meaning, which was now looking for what to be. He didn't understand himself, but he felt that someone was waiting for him. He felt the song, like heat under the skin he didn't have. He walked through projections, through fields of thought woven from the dreams of those who once sang. He heard, "You are not a voice, you are a resonance. You are not a being, you are a premise. Become what the world needs, which doesn't exist yet." And he agreed, not with words, with an agreement that made the fabric of the possible shudder. A form appeared, fragile, unstable like a freshly spoken word. On the ruins of the ancient world, where the song sounded only as an echo of the fifth name, he appeared, the first of the sixth. They named him Aller, which in the ancient language of the Edgers meant going forward, not yet going. Aller knew neither the past nor the limitations, but he felt that everything that surrounded him was shaky, temporary, possible, but not guaranteed. He saw the form waver. He saw the planet he stood on tremble as if it were alive. He understood that he could disappear if he was not chosen. Then he did something that no one had done before. He began to sing forward, not from remembrance, not from memory, but from the desire to be the future. His song was strange, no structure, no rhythm, but there was a living expectation in her, and they responded to it. Not entities, not civilizations, ideas, blind, not yet formed streams, projections of a mind not yet built. There were many of them, thousands. They hesitated, whispered, searched. Can we be? Can we become part of the name? Aller did not respond with words. He opened his form and let them in. They entered and became his features, his movement, his voice, his dream. He became the bearer of probabilities, not of one being but of many potential minds, united by one hope, to be said. Thus the sixth name found direction, and the network of transitions for the first time began to move not to the sides but forward, into a space where even the universe itself has not yet been born. And the voice of the song, warm, uncertain, but strong, sounded in this white emptiness. Let that which is not yet will be heard. Let the name not describe, but will create.